Alright guys, first off, as always, a good day. I'm glad you're here. So this video is, we're going to finish off World War II. Okay, there's a lot I decided, you know what, since this is the last day of the school year, this is the last lesson, I gotta finish it. So there's a lot of stuff I am like really upset about that I am not going to be able to teach you because of the COVID thing, and again, time is short. So like the Holocaust. We are totally skipping over that. And again, I am truly sorry from the bottom depths of my heart. I am so sorry. But as you guys know, I'd like to teach you about everything, the most important stuff, especially. And that lesson alone would have taken me 2 weeks. Because again, there's so much stuff to it. There's so much things that even if I did that, even if I included it with World War II, um, we wouldn't have finished. We'd barely be, I mean, not even at D-Day, probably barely Pearl Harbor. Okay. So again, I do apologize. Um, if the COVID had not happened, we would have definitely been through that. We would have been over with it. Okay. So here's your warm-up picture. Um, so what do you see, and what do you think this artist is trying to say? Okay. Now we're moving on to the notes. So here's the thing. January 14th through the 24th, in the Casablanca Conference, FDR and Churchill announced that only an unconditional surrender from Germany will be accepted. And not just Germany, Italy, Japan, and all the Axis powers. So they have to give up. No, oh, we'll quit for a day or two or a week, whatever. No, no. You surrender completely or fighting. Yeah. Okay. February 19th through the 25th, um, American troops are tested for the first time in Africa by the German Panzer, which are the tanks, and they're led by this guy, Field Marshal Erwin Desert Fox Rommel. Now, he knew his stuff. This guy was well revered by the German people, and he shows the U.S. and Britain he's not a man to mess with. So it takes a while, for the planes, the tanks, the soldiers to get into the whole gear of war. But by May 12th, they get it, and the Axis power surrenders to uh, the Allies, and North Africa then belongs to the Allies. So the Germans and Italians, they go back up north, you know. Um, July 10th, the Allied forces land in Sicily and gain control of the Mediterranean Sea. Now the Allies start bombing Rome, just demolishing it and some of that. About 2 weeks later, the fascist ground council basically says, you know what, we have no more faith in Mussolini. All right, this is some governments, they have this where they can kick out their leaders, called a vote of no confidence, and that's what these guys do. So he is arrested, and court martial law is implemented in in Italy. Now, the thing is, September 8th, Italy surrenders to the Allies. They're like, okay, you know what, we're done. We're done. Okay. Now, German soldiers in Italy are like, well, if they're surrendering, we might as well attack them, and that's what they do. So October 6th, Italy then declared war on Germany. Just like 6 months ago, they were allies, and now they're going against each other. Okay. All right. So November 18th, 1943, the Battle of Berlin begins. The German capital is constantly bombed from November 18th to March 24th, 1944, and they're constantly bombed. Okay. Um, Other stuff happened in Europe. But again, we're going to skip through that because, again, it's the last day, last lesson. So I just want to get this whole thing done with, because I want you to know what happens in World War II. So June 6th, 1944, D-Day. Some of you guys may know about this because of video games, movies, things like that. But here's what happens. about 24,000 paratroopers, people in airplanes with the parachutes jumping out. They land behind enemy lines, about 1,000 planes of them go over the English Channel, drop them off, right? Um, and then at 6:30, the U.S. they begin the land invasion. So they come in. Okay, 7:30, British come in, and here's the thing too: the Canadians actually had a division that invaded on D-Day. A lot of people forget that it was just the U.S. or it was U.S. and Britain. Really, it was U.S., Britain, and Canada. Okay, a total of 176,000 men crossed the Channel in 5,300 boats across a 45-mile stretch of land. Okay, so this picture up on top is a one of the most famous D-Day pictures. You can see the soldiers coming out of the boats. Um, so this was called Operation Overlord. Okay, um, the U.S. troops landed at Omaha Beach and Utah Beach. British troops landed at Gold and Sword. That's what their section was called. And the Canadian troops landed at Juno. Okay, this was the bloodiest U.S. battle since Antietam. Now, again, you guys are world history, so you really don't know about Antietam, but you will next year. So when you guys talk about the Civil War, you're going to hear about Antietam and how bad it was. I mean, it was bloody. People shooting, like me, getting 2 rounds of shots on their musket guns, and then they had to start fighting with their swords and start stabbing each other and some of that. It was pretty bad. Okay. With all this push, just bam, hitting them, the Germans were forced to retreat, and they lost the beaches. So this gave a foothold for the Allies to get into Europe. Now Hitler, now sensing again what happened with Stalingrad, which happened last video we're talking about. Since they're losing in Stalingrad, he's like, you know what? Let's focus on these guys. You know, we have a chance still to kick them out because they barely came in. If we give a good enough push, we can get them out. So that's the plan. Okay. Now here's the thing: Hitler didn't really have the complete love and loyalty of the German people. That's the thing that people forget, is that there were some German people who didn't like Hitler. They thought he was like something's off with this guy, but they didn't want to say anything because if they said stuff, they could be arrested. They could be seen as a traitor. They could be arrested, killed, or whatever. So they would have the portrait of Hitler in their home, do the salute and everything. But really, they did it because you had to, and they were scared that if you didn't, someone's going to report you. Okay. But the thing is, there were some plots to kill Hitler. The SS and Gestapo actually found 42 of them. There could have been a lot more, but the 42 are the ones that the Gestapo and the SS actually found out about. But the most famous one was what happened July 20th. It's known as the July Plot or Operation Valkyrie. Basically, these high-level German officers decided to stage a coup and get rid of Hitler. Now, the bomb was supposed to go off at the Wolf Slayer, which it did. But Hitler was there, but not everyone else, the other top people that were Hitler's right-hand men. And what happened was these guys ranging, as you can see, from colonel generals to major generals and lieutenant colonels and some of that, they almost completed the mission, but they didn't, and they were all arrested and they were killed. Okay, so again, like I was saying, not every German people loved Hitler. So they tried to do something about it. August 15th, American and French forces take over southern France. Hitler then pulls his army out of France. Now, the thing is, the Allies trap 80,000 German soldiers in this one town right here. All right. Now, Hitler's orders are for them to go to Germany. But the thing is, they're trapped in this town, and the Allies are dropping bombs between this town and Germany. These German soldiers decide to run it. So they're going through this area, and bombs are just being dropped bah, 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 for 3 days. Of the 80,000, about 10,000 German soldiers are dead. And the thing is, you have to remember, let's say early in the day on the second day, some of these soldiers are killed. They're killed. They're on the ground. And later on that day, more bombs are being dropped. Some of these bombs would actually blow up at or near the same spots as before, and some of these bodies would be just blown up several times. So the smell, and look at the time too, in August. It's not the coolest time either. So the smell got so bad that some of the pilots knew exactly where they were bombing because the smell was like, oh yeah, we're here where the dead bodies are. Yeah, we're in the right spot. They could tell from the smell. That's how bad it was. Okay. So here is your questions. The first of your many. Do you think it's smart move to accept the assistance or help from people you were just at war with? So do you think that's smart? That again, the Italians were against us 1 month, and then like 2 months later, they're now joining us. Was that a smart move to do to accept the help of people who we are fighting against? You know. Second question is, do you think that the D-Day plan was the best way to take the beaches? Because like my dad, he always watches these movies, watches these documentaries, and he's always like, "Oh, I would have done this. I would have done this. I would have done this." And it's like, well, okay, what would you have done? Does that sound feasible? Does that sound like that's a smart thing to do? So you tell me, was a full-on invasion, was that the smart thing to do? What else could have been done if you were in charge? How would you do the invasion? Okay, so be sure you write that. All right, so now we're going to jump up a little bit to the Battle of the Bulge, December 16th. This is the last push by the Germans to try to kick the Allies back. Germany sends shells at and around American positions. 20 German infantry divisions come together. That's 250,000 people, 250,000. And they move along this 50-mile stretch of land. And then on top of that, there's 600 tanks behind them. So they're pushing through. So if you look at this map where the purple line is, the solid purple line, that's what the original line was. Excuse me. And then when you see the line kind of a little bit dashed, that's where the second push came in. So they pushed them back. And if you look at the purple dots, that's the third line. So you can see the Nazis and the red arrows actually pushed the Allies pretty far back. Okay. 10,000 men were captured, they were surrounded at some point, some of that. January 30th, 1945, over a month later, the Allied gained all that land back. The Battle of the Bulge is over. 19,000 soldiers are killed. 60,000 are wounded, captured, or missing. But the Germans lose about 100,000 men, and almost all of their tanks and planes are destroyed. So it's like beginning to look really, 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 really bad for the Germans. Okay. April 25th, American and Russian soldiers, they meet up at Torgau. And Germany is now cut in half, basically. And what happens is the Russians go into Berlin to try to take it, capture Hitler. So April 30th, the Russians go into Reichstag, the power, the heart of the where the Germans are and where Hitler has his headquarters. Um, Later that afternoon, they're about half a mile away from his bunker. Hitler then appoints this admiral, the head of state, and he makes Joseph Goebbels uh, as the chancellor. He basically says, "You're taking over my job." Hitler then marries his mistress. She becomes his wife, Eva Braun. They poison themselves and their dogs. And just for good measure, Hitler shoots himself in the head. Okay. The soldiers quickly then take his body out to the garden and they light it on fire. And then that's when the Russian soldiers come in. They see his body burning. They get it out. You know. Um, so Hitler is dead. May 7th, Germany surrenders. Right now, you can see um, it says, "Oh, Germany's going to fight on." The chancellor guy's like, "We're going to fight to the end," things like that. They didn't. So May 9th, VE Day is declared. Victory in Europe. Everyone's happy, um, but not completely. Okay, the war is still going on. There's still Japan. So November 22nd through the 26th, the Allies have a conference in Cairo, Egypt, and agree only an unconditional surrender from Japan will be accepted. So again, no, oh, we'll take a break, no fighting for a month or whatever. No, none of that. Either you quit or we're fighting to you to the end. June 15th, 1944, in Saipan. It's this 14-mile long island with a bunch of different terrains. There's jungle, there's cliffs, there's mountains, there's like a desert area. It's unique. It's defended by 30,000 Japanese troops. And for 2 days, the U.S. is bombing it. Okay. So for 4 weeks, they're fighting. 16,525 American soldiers are killed or reported missing, but 30,000 Japanese soldiers are dead. Now, the thing is, at Saipan, there was 4,000 Japanese civilians. This thing is, they were scared, but they were basically convinced by their government that the U.S. soldiers, were going to torture them. And the best thing you could do was to have an honorable death, which was kill yourselves, right? That whole, samurai mentality, you die with honor type of thing. It's more honor to kill yourselves than to surrender, you know. And many of them committed suicide. A lot of them had kids. And there's this cliff called Marpi Point, um, and people would jump off it. Soldiers saw civilians, women with children, just walking off the edge, or they just jumped, and they fall into the rocky ground below. You know, um, it's a tragedy. You know. Now there were some people, who were captured, who did surrender, and they told horrific stories. Like some Japanese people wanted to surrender, and they were killed by Japanese soldiers. You know, they were told basically, "Hey, you don't surrender. You want to surrender?" They shoot them. You're gonna die either way. So that's the thing. So it was really pretty bad. February 19th, 1945, Battle of Iwo Jima. Now, unlike other places where the United States came into the island and they invaded, this one was unique. For 72 days, they bombed this island. Now, there were natural caves at this island. Some of the Japanese had man-made caves and little bunkers there. Um, and for, like I said, 72 days, they're bombing it with, fire from these battleships. Then the U.S. Marines go in. For a month, they're fighting. 6,821 Americans are killed. That's 5 times as much that died than Guadalcanal or Saipan, the one we're just talking about. But thing is, because of their bravery, 27 of those soldiers who fought there received the Medal of Honor. That's the highest award you can get if you're in the U.S. military. And also, this is where the most historic U.S. picture was taken. Um, it was at Iwo Jima. I'm going to show you right now. It's this one. Some of you guys may have seen it in movies. Some of you guys may have seen it in, posters and statues, things like that. Um, but that's the picture. Again, it's one of the most iconic pictures ever taken in U.S. history. Okay. Uh, so your next question is, looking at that picture, what comes to your mind when you see it? Okay. Write a sentence or two and be sure to mention if you've seen this picture. If you do, have you seen it? Have you seen it in a video, in a movie, have you seen the statue, in a movie or a TV show or whatever? So again, this, and if you haven't, tell me, you know, what comes to your mind when you see this picture? Knowing that all these people died, this cannon fire for, I mean, geez, like 2 months constantly, and the amount of people who died, and all that. So what is that picture, what comes to your mind when you see that picture? Okay, so here's the thing. The US was actually secretly building an atomic weapon for years. This idea to create one, it didn't come from them. It came from intelligent sources saying that Hitler wanted to create a nuclear weapon, and he did. But the thing is, they were kind of close, but they weren't really. So some people think, oh, these scientists, maybe they didn't like Hitler. So they were like, oh, darn it, we're so close, Or they really weren't close. They really tried, but they weren't close. So there's some, what the truth is, nobody really knows. Okay. Um, so the president, FDR, created this Office of Scientific Research and Development. And their job was to see, could this weapon be created and how, if it could. So the ORSD formed the Manhattan Engineering District, and then that's where the project got its name, the Manhattan Project. Now, this project was so secret that when the president died, FDR, and the vice president took over, and they're like, okay, sir, so now that you're president, we're going to tell you, we're making a weapon, and we're almost done. And it's just like, what? What are you talking about? So that's when they let him know. Um, Basically, there's two atomic bombs that were going to be created. One from uranium, which was Little Boy, and the other one was plutonium, which was called Fat Man. Now, here's the thing with the bomb, as you can see from the picture above. Um, it's basically you have a molecule and it breaks it down, right? So the atoms split and they release energy. And then from that energy, it causes a reaction, and from there, just boom, 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 like kind of like a domino effect. Knock one down, the other one, another one, another one. Now, there were some people who speculated that if this happens, it may not be contained to just this element. It might actually go into, you know, like our air. It could split up the water molecules, the air molecules, the very fabric of our being. It could destroy our molecules, or it could light the atmosphere on fire, you know. And then solar radiation and solar flares, and could be hitting us. We'll cook to death, So there was a lot of what does this thing do? How far does it go? Nobody really knew, and that was the scary thing about it. Okay, so July 26, 1945, at the Potsdam Conference, the U.S. gives an ultimatum to Japan saying, okay, either you surrender or be prepared to face prompt and utter destruction. Now, at that same day, the USS Indianapolis is actually delivering the bomb to one of the islands where a plane was going to come and pick it up to use it, just in case Japan says no. July 30th, Japanese plane sees the USS Indianapolis. They already dropped off the bomb. They're heading back home, and then they get sunk. Now, why is this significant? Because 1,196 men went into the water. Okay, they were able to get out of the boat, and they're just floating there in the middle of the ocean, but they're surrounded by sharks. Yeah, they're surrounded by sharks, and they're like cuddled up and like, geez, come on, seriously, The next day after that, Japan rejects that proposal, um, and then on August 2nd, uh, of those 1,196 people, um, 880 of them are killed. Okay, they're killed, eaten by sharks, things like that. Some of them die from the explosions and all that stuff from the ship. Um, but only 321 are taken out of the water. Okay, so this is a very now it's famous story, but back in the day wasn't really known about what happened to the USS Indianapolis. So August 6th, the Enola Gay, that's the name of the plane, drops the atomic bomb, the little boy, at almost 2,000 feet above, because they noticed on the test bombing, the bomb exploded, just because they had it on the ground, and they're like, if we leave it in the air, it's gonna just explode, and it's gonna reach a radius more than we could think of, and it does about 5 miles. It destroys. So 40,000 men, women, and children dead. Another 100,000 would die in the next several days from the radiation burns or the radiation itself. Um, and then over the next 5 years, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of them die from radiation poisoning from the water, their drinking water. They had no idea that the radiation would fall into their water and be just sitting there. You know, it wouldn't dilute or anything. Still, Japan does not surrender. Okay, so here's a picture of soldiers being picked up, and if you can look in the water, there's some sharks right there. Okay. All right, so I moved the picture up on top now. But August 9th, the second atomic bomb, the Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki. 40,000 were killed instantly. And it was so bad that if you look at that's a picture up on top where the screen is. That's the town. But if you look at the pictures below that, those are shadows casted from the explosion. So that one right below the destroyed city, that's somebody sitting down. That's their shadow. They were vaporized. Um, there's that turning, valve. The permanent shadows on the side of that building. If you look at the bottom, there's a bicycle. You know, the shadow of the bicycle. The one next to it, there's somebody sitting next to a ladder. And the last one's an old person with a cane. Those are permanent marker, guys, of people last moment on this earth before they were completely vaporized. Okay, it's not a pretty thing. Okay, but that night, the Japanese Direction of War Council had a meeting. There's 6 people, and they were split 3-3. Do we surrender or do we fight on? And they couldn't come to an agreement, so they had to go to the emperor to break the tie. Now the thing is, August 10th, the next day, Japan says, okay, we'll surrender, but we have some conditions. You know, we want some stuff. And the allies are like, no, 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 nothing. We said you either completely stop, you quit completely, or we're going to keep fighting. August 14th, they accept the unconditional surrender. August 30th, the Allied forces go into Japan. September 2nd, the Japanese signed the ceremonial surrender on the USS Missouri, and the war is officially over. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. I've talked about how there was an invasion plan. There really was. The plan was to attack on November 1st. Now, it would have costed, the US said it would have costed them about 1 million soldiers' lives to invade Japan. Japan was actually ready to fight. They had about 500,000 soldiers ready to fight, but they were prepared to have 6 million of their citizens fight as well. Everything from a gun to bamboo spears. So it would have costed more lives on both sides to do an invasion. All right, so here is your final questions. How would you react if you were stuck in the middle of the ocean surrounded by sharks? What would you do? You know, would you? I mean, again, you're with people you know, this and that, in the water. There's no phone, no way of communicating. Nobody knows you're out there. You know, and who knows when help may come. So, what do you do with the sharks? How do you do? What would you do in that situation? Okay, so let me know about that one. The second one is, why do you think Japan didn't surrender after the first atomic bomb dropped? What are some reasons why they wouldn't surrender, knowing how destructive this bomb was? Okay, and the last one is, do you think the US did the right thing with dropping the atomic bombs? Okay, some people say, hey, it's justified. They bombed Pearl Harbor, we bombed them. Some people say no, they were just so strong-headed. We need to do something to stop them from fighting. Some people say, hey, we're going to lose a lot of lives, with the invasion. So this was actually better. So tell me what you think. Okay. Now, once you answer these questions on the Google form, you're done. That's it. Congratulations. End of the war. Okay. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned something new. Again, I do apologize again for not going over the Holocaust. I had so much plans for that. But again, because of the COVID, it stopped us. Okay, so I do apologize. I am so deeply saddened. Okay, and again, hopefully you guys learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.